What happens to the biggest fighters in the world when they're done fighting, when they want to retire? Well, you'd think that they'd run off and live a cushy life, but a lot of them really struggle after retirement. In fact, it's quite a steep drop-off for them psychologically. They've worked their whole life towards being the champion or towards being a great fighter, and a lot of them, it's bleak. They lose their sense of purpose. So what happens to a fighter after they're done being in the camera, being in the spotlight? There are a couple of great constructive places that they can go, or that some of them choose to go. But I wanted to talk about it because I have a deep admiration for warriors who step out in the octagon, who go to war, and ultimately it's for furthering their career, but it's also for our entertainment. So you don't want to see them finish their career and then really start to struggle. You want to see them be set up for success. They have really four kind of options that seem to be apparent to me that I've seen great fighters take. Now, obviously there's the become an alcoholic option. That's not this video. This video is some ideas that they tend to go down. One of them would be going straight into something like wrestling, boxing, or bare knuckle. Now, if you just had a long, bloody career in the octagon, that might not be where you want to go. You might be tired. You might be exhausted. You might be hurt. You might be permanently injured. A lot of these guys are constantly carrying on. I mean, Alex Pereira knocked the guy out, but he had a broken toe while he was doing it. So these guys are carrying around injuries all the time. If you don't know this sport, they are constantly injured. Nobody goes into a fight with a fully healed, fresh, ready to go body. Everyone is hurting in one way or another. I mean, fighters have gone in with torn ACLs and they finish the fight. So maybe you go into one of those, maybe you don't. But if you're an exhausted fighter, you'd think, man, I can put on some wars, entertain some people, and retire. Well, a lot of times these guys don't really have the money to do that. At least they're not set up for the rest of their life. Another option is the ESPN analyst. This is the second option. And you've seen fighters like Dustin Poirier do this. You've seen Dean Thomas do this. You've seen fighters go down the route of, you know what? I'm gonna try and analyze this sport for the viewer, whether it's casual or for the expert viewer. These guys offer an insight to the sport. And I personally, I'm a huge fan of this when they do this. I think it shows how professional a lot of these guys are. They're able to articulate with words what's really going on to help people really understand whether maybe there's a move that you're not familiar with, and they can guide you through, okay, here's what this guy is trying to do. Here's how to counter it. They're able to offer a lot of colorful insight in a way that an inexperienced, just general journalist can't, or at least not if they're not training. Another option that you've seen a lot of you, and I have a lot of respect for these guys, go into is the YouTube or content creator route. Corey Sandhagen, Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski, they've all gone their different routes. Corey does a lot of the tutorials, kind of like Craig Jones does. Israel Adesanya does kind of just the fight breakdowns with his brother. And Volkanovski actually has this whole other channel where he's just talking about food all the time. I think and I know I'm not a psychologist here, but you want something just in general when you're done, when you're retiring, you really need a purpose to get up in the morning. And this goes across all, I've talked to a lot of people. My mentor retired recently and I talked to him about it too. I'm like, man, please find a way to keep yourself fit. And these people, they're aware of it. When you lose your purpose, things can get really bleak. In the case of a fighter, it gets really dark really quickly, or can, because they're so focused on one thing. If you have a regular career, it's like, it's a little different. Sometimes people don't hate what they do. So like, finally I can sit on a beach somewhere, but these guys are different. You're working your entire life towards something. So retirement is not, you got to have something to sink your teeth into. And in the way of creating on the internet, it benefits everyone. It benefits them. They can still be in the spotlight. They can still offer value. And it's kind of a difficult thing to do. It's not something that you could just create a successful YouTube. Some people try and some people do better than others, but it's something they can sink their teeth into and really create. The other thing is obviously teaching. You can have a lot of fighters that help with fellow fighters fight camps. That was a lot of the word fight. You'll have pro fighters that work with other pro fighters, sometimes on the same team. And so sometimes they'll help. That gives them a sense of purpose to go out and help their fellow man prepare for their fight or teach a class. Now, obviously, there's a very big difference between performing and fighting and teaching. Those are different things, but it does offer a constructive way to still be involved in the game, as it were. These were some ideas that I wrote down. I'm curious what your thoughts And the overall kind of, I don't want to say purpose of this video, you know, these are some things that they get into after they're fighting, but a lot of times I wanted to make this video because they're really struggling. We saw it with Dustin Poirier recently. We saw Conor McGregor go off the deep end. We see a lot of fighters choose drugs and alcohol after their phenomenal runs a lot of times, and it's not something I want. So maybe starting a conversation about, you know, ideas for these guys after they're done putting on incredible performances, being the best fighters on planet Earth. You don't want to see them hurting. You don't want to see them lose that spark in their eye. So wanted to talk a little bit about that. Guys, if you like documentaries, I did a documentary on Dustin Poirier. I covered Alex Pereira. I put a lot of effort into researching a lot of media, analyzing fights. And actually in my next documentary, I've talked to a lot of really intelligent people, and I'm very thankful for that. So if you like high budget, you know, a lot of effort in this channel is for yapping. My other channel is for a lot of effort into one video. That channel is @Owenly Productions. Go subscribe there, subscribe here if you just want to hear me yap about the best sport in the world. Talk to you soon.